It's a real pleasure seeing you again, Nikhil. You look nice, tired, but happy. And no pun intended. And it's really nice to see you after Goa. I think it must have been 2 years. And
It's the same and the same. Good to see you too.
yeah,
And
you
and and
know,
it's nice to build on many conversations that we've had in the past, and to build on that conversation is always, a question about sustainability that I like to have, is about how do you sustain relationships.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
we've been with each other for a few years now.
right. So I'll jump in now.
Please go
Uh,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So, Nikhil, the collective has always been an important part of your practice, starting with the HH art spaces.
Yeah.
When you taken me there in Goa. So, could you add to that?
Yes. Well, my career starts with collaborations. It starts with, conversations and dialogues, right? I've never been interested in the idea of the studio, artist studio being an isolated space. From the
Right.
very beginning, I've always embraced the fact that I'm someone who enjoys being around people, and has always acknowledged the fact that one always creates in context. And I'm very aware of the fact that around our artistic practices, we develop ecosystems develop collectives become communities become, a culture. So this is a sort of ripple effect that happens with dropping a pebble in a pond, which kind of circles sort of concentrically outward to create patterns that one may not have predicted but allow to
Yeah.
happen. So, it's been very organic in the way HH Art Spaces has come together. We start
Hmm.
off with, um, you know, a dialogue between two artists, mainly Roma and myself. Roma is a
Yeah.
French, uh,
Yes.
and he is an artist, a sculptor, a sound artist, an actor. Was very interested, and always has been interested in performance and liveness.
Hmm.
Clicked very immediately, and then we invited my partner, my wife, our good friend Madhavi
Mahavi.
Gure
Yeah.
into the mix. And
Right.
as we grew, we realized that this was becoming an animal that was bigger than us. So,
Hmm.
which is Shaira Sakera Shetty, who's just walked into the room actually.
Okay.
And I'm happy to send these names to you in writing
Please
so
do. Please
that
do. Yes.
spellings right. Was really kind of looking after the running engine of the organization, that then also
Hmm.
joined the partnership, and then Shivani Gupta, who had been
Hmm.
seriously looking at the archive and how we were storing our images, how we were documenting, what were the residues that were coming out of the live work that we were making, also joins the partnership. And then we've grown to invite Shruti, Madhurjo, Divesh, Alex, and
Hmm.
all together we form what we collectively call HH Art Spaces. I wouldn't necessarily say we're a collective. I would
Okay.
say we're an organization. We're a disorganization.
Hmm.
We're a flexstitution. We are a movement. We are ever evolving, ever changing, shape shifting. We're always reacting as opposed to acting. And this is the spirit that we're bringing into the Biennale, that one does not create in isolation. One always
Right.
creates in context of community, in context of people, where
Hmm.
we reflect the state of the world, where we reflect um, the conditions that we work in. We reflect the way in which we like to live and love,
Hmm.
and innately in that expression lie our
Hmm.
politics. So it's a shared interest, it's a thread
Right.
that we run through all of us and every single person that's going to come to the Biennale, whether as an artist or an audience, that is going to feel that idea
Hmm.
of gathering, collecting, and moving together.
Right. Right. Perfect. And how has the friendship economy been an instrumental part of your own artistic journey?
Well, I would say you can work together when you trust each other. It's a
Hmm.
way in which I want to counter this idea of heavy-handed professionalism. While I think it's very important to make a distinction between what is
Hmm.
personal and what is professional, what is work and what is life. But in some way, as artists, those things sort of get mashed up together.
Yeah.
And I like to think about the fact that we need to be friends. And the reason
Hmm.
why I put friendship into it is because we can lean on each other. We can lean on each other artistically. We can lean on each other for talents that we don't have and need.
Right.
We lean on each other to raise funds for what we do together.
Hmm.
In a sense, it's not transactional, but it's co-living,
Hmm.
co-working, co-thinking,
Hmm.
and this idea of collaboration, the idea
Hmm.
that there is co in it, which is all the co's that you can possibly think of.
Yeah.
There's labor in it, which is about work. There is elaboration, which is about the expanding of who we are and how we think when we come together.
Uh,
So there's these various kind of ways in which, this idea that we feed each other, we feed each other's imagination. We literally feed each other by putting food on the table. We feed each other by creating spaces for us to share our ideas and take risks together. In a
hmm.
sense, what do friends do? In a sense, at the end of the day, friends have each other's back.
And so it was important that this be part of the Biennale, the underlying thought.
It is, because at the end of the day, what I've done is, working within the very kind of limited financial resources, being very
Hmm.
aware of limited ecological resources. I'm not taking the liberty of putting myself on a plane and traveling all around the world, going to artist studio to
Hmm.
artist studio. I've not made this a reason for me to discover new, uncharted, undiscovered artists across the planet. What I've done is I've literally kind of looked at my own Rolodex and kind of
Hmm.
remember amazing people that I've encountered over the years, invited our curatorial team to look through their relationships and people that they have connected with over the years, people and
Hmm.
talent they have admired and have always dreamt of kind of collaborating
Hmm.
with and bringing, into conversation with. It's
And
about
not be in silos.
exactly, and about
Hmm.
creating long sustainable and continuing on long sustainable
Hmm.
relationships, um and developing a biennale from that standpoint, as
Ah,
opposed to constantly being feeling like we have to offer something new to the world. You can't, there is nothing
right.
really.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what has been the most challenging aspects of bringing the Biennale together emotionally and politically? Emotionally, more importantly.
Well, Kerala is a very complex and extremely interesting and self-aware place.
Hmm.
I mean, you have to understand that when we're talking to a critical mass here more than we are anywhere else in the country. I mean, I don't think people anywhere else in the country are that aware of current affairs, cinema,
Hmm.
music, and at the same time are aware of their own very deeply connected cultural roots. The conditions that we are going to be making an exhibition in are also
Hmm.
challenging, right? When we don't have access to air-conditioned, white cube, museum-like spaces. We are
Yes.
popping up in old warehouses, derelict spaces, mold-ridden, fungus-eaten, termite-bitten, spaces that have been left to themselves and to time to
Hmm.
destroy them, for whatever means, for lack of means. Um, so it's been a real challenge for us to sort of um, to kind of imagine contemporary art. Well, you can imagine contemporary art, but how do you
Hmm.
bring works of art that are, you know, um, that have value to them, right? How do you bring works that are quote unquote expensive and place them in these
Yes.
spaces where they're truly vulnerable. So the challenge
Yes.
is to kind of talk artists through these very difficult conditions that we have to make and display and run a contemporary art exhibition for a period of 3 to 4 months.
Right.
So that's one of the challenges that I think I kind of enjoy that challenge.
In times when artists are self-censoring, of course, that's because of the present social and political times we live in. How tough is it for you to convince them to let go, to be themselves?
Well, I think one of the most powerful tools that artists have is subversion,
Yeah.
is to be able to take the politics and not offer it on a plate, but
Hmm.
to allow for slippages and cracks in the way in which we do things for people to fall through those cracks and realize that
Yeah.
they are confronting something that's much deeper than what is skin, right? So, I think that a lot of the practices that have invited will not be overt, but
Of
subvert,
course.
you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, there is politicking happening with probably every proposal.
So, Nikhil, considering the fact that performance and temporality have been a highlight of your artistic journey ever since I've known you.
Well, firstly, the Biennale is a temporary exhibition. It's
Yes.
something that it pops up.
Hmm.
It's like a mela. It's like the fair
True.
that comes,
Yeah.
ignites the
Hmm.
atmosphere, delights everyone, and leaves everyone with this kind of memory and anticipation
Yeah.
of the arrival of the next one. So what we do understand is that time actually is our material, is our clay, is our charcoal, is our oils, are our
Hmm.
paint that we use just as much as a painter or a sculptor would use material. We're very aware that there are entries and there are exits, just as the way in which they are with the Biennale, right? There's a moment of entry and there's a beginning and there's an end. We will come and then we will go,
Hmm.
Uh, so we've also invited a lot of practices that are aware of that kind of dynamism. We've also invited artwork that it doesn't commit itself to objects or necessarily a static object in a space, but a dynamic object or series of
Okay.
objects. A series of the objects that have the ability to be moved and can move, you know.
Hmm.
Um, we've also invited a few artists that are going to be bridging the gap between studio and exhibition.
Right.
Where artists will be using the exhibition spaces as their studios to make work in the moment, in the now.
Right.
Um, and when we do that, what we do is we place the body really very much at the center, right? In the
Hmm.
center of our investigation, in the center of our study, because we do recognize the body as the maker, but also as the archive, as the container, as the
Hmm.
library, as the museum, as the
Hmm.
institution that we carry with us.
Taking a cue from what you said, artists getting out of the studio and going out to make art. So this is something we witnessed during the recent farmers' protest, the Shaheen
Yeah,
Bagh protest.
yeah,
So that was an eye opener, leaving the studio behind and just being out there exposed.
yeah, yeah. Because, at the end of the day, that you realize that, you turn your vulnerability into your weapon, that there is only one way to do that is
Yeah.
to embrace that vulnerability and to
Hmm.
turn it into your strength, is
Hmm.
to point to everyone's vulnerability, and to use resilience and to use the power of to use collective power as a means to challenge hegemonic power and to challenge domination, is
Hmm.
to come together and to resist together.
And the encounter is very interesting, you
Yeah,
know, when they
yeah,
come out and they're encountering it. So,
yes, yes, encounter. Yeah, encountering is very important. It is very important. The street is not a safe space. The
Yeah.
street is
Yeah.
a dangerous place. A gallery is a safe space.
Yes.
you know and that's a difference between the two. When
Mm.
artists get out of their studios, sure, and get onto the streets, they are actually not necessarily artists, at that
Yes.
moment. They are
Yeah.
human, and they are part of uh, the larger kind of
Mm.
collective of human beings, and they place themselves in that collection of voices when they do that in the form of protest.
Nikhil, let's admit it. You've always been a disruptor.
A disruptor.
So, do you feel you've brought that to to the upcoming Biennale? Let's scare the Biennale people.
uh, I, I I don't really, I really don't, I really I'm not aiming to disrupt.
You are being safe now. Okay.
Well, there is a design, there is a history of artists that have wanted to um, challenge canons and preset notions about how art is supposed to be sent and received. And there's a difference between destruction and creation. You know,
Absolutely.
and I'm very kind of acutely aware of that. Like, I feel that when one destroys to create, I think there is a difference between when one is just
True.
disruptive.
True.
So I was never the disruptive kid in school. I was always the good kid. I didn't sit in the back bench. I sat somewhere in the middle of class.
Oh, okay.
So I was never someone who would challenge authority. I was always very frightened of authority. The only way for me to understand and challenge that authority as I grew up was to become an authority in something and at something. And
Right.
for me, that became the language of performance and the language of making pictures as a drawer, as a painter. And I've used it as a means to not disrupt, but to expand. Actually,
Hmm.
is to challenge, but also to not conform. I think that's really important. Is that I was very aware of, like, not playing into the expectations of what people would have, especially at the time when India was getting a lot of international attention as India.
Hmm.
It was very important for us to project what
Is India.
Indian meant or didn't mean.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in that respect, there was this moment of, like, wanting to be and feel punk and alternative and outrageous, and to really kind of break people's understandings of what it
Hmm.
meant to be Indian, what it meant to be man, what it meant to be urban, what it meant to be internationally traveled, and what it meant to be also from a privileged, educated upper middle class family, what that meant.
Right.
So it was important for me to break that. I mean, and it comes directly from reflecting on growing up in a very tough situation, with the family falling apart and parents separating, and
Hmm.
so all of those things were really, it's interesting you bring up the word disruption. I mean, I think that there was a lot of disruption in my personal life, but that how
I.
it played itself out into my practice has
Hmm.
been,
Hmm.
in a way, putting myself in a position where I feel like I've got nothing to lose. And I think that's where this feeling of risque kind of uh,
Yes.
practice really kind of is born out of.
Hmm. Right. So, was there any method to selecting the artists in quotes?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I just said, like, there was
Huh.
this lens that was consistently applied by the entire curatorial team, was to look for the presence of the artist in their work, and it could have been whether it's
Hmm.
them physically present in their
Hmm.
work, or whether it's them actually kind of materially present in their work. The idea that is the artist present,
Right.
so like, just having worked with even people like Marina
Hmm.
Abramovich, and,
Huh.
being acutely aware of the fact that the artist is present is something that,
Yes.
is a seminal exhibition by her. So, it's sort
Yes.
of like stuck with me, and the
Huh.
question becomes, is the artist really present? You know? Um, and that's been one of the lenses that we've used when we've invited.
And over the years, do you feel performance art has solidified its place in India? Or has it? Has it
Um,
not?
n- n- uh, um, well, firstly, I don't necessarily feel that it needs to
Okay.
solidify. Like, I think that it's not something, it's not a form of art that can be actually imposed. It's not
Right.
necessarily a form of art that can be even taught.
Okay.
Um, it's really the will of the artist that has to kind of bring them
Hmm.
to this urgent need to place their bodies in their practices. I think there's a lot of performativity
Hmm.
within the Indian art world, and I think that idea of, my story, my narrative, my history, my language, my body, has become more and more pronounced over the past few years with the younger generation.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, well, definitely. Like, I think that there has been an awareness about performance and live art over the past few years that has spread.
Life must be so hectic in the past few months. Are there moments when you just want to lock the room and look at your own body?
No, I mean, yes. Um, uh, yes, no, not to look at my own body.
No,
I
you
think
understand. Yeah.
I've looked at my body now for years. Um, uh, Not yet. And I think that this is not the time for me to do that. I don't think this is a time for me to lock myself away. I think the more if I were to attempt to lock myself away, it's very hard to lock your mind away. So, even on Sundays, on that quiet
Hmm.
hour, when I'm trying to take a siesta, take a nap, I am still dreaming about the Biennale.
Hmm.
There are no quiet moments, there are always active moments,
But
which
you
in
never
turn,
know. I mean, what if the Biennale keeps following you?
you know what? I do know how to escape,
Okay.
I think that that's something that, like I can Houdini myself away, and, I do know how to, cut myself off at some point,
Yes.
because I will need to rest, and I will need to recover, and I will need to find quiet moments when I can reflect on how intense this year has been. And I know I will do that. I mean, my life in Goa is fairly like peaceful. It's
Yes.
quiet. It allows me as much public life as I want to have, but also as much of isolation and quiet and solitude as I need.
Wonderful. And I hope to see you very soon in Kochi.
Yes, yes. Please come to the
Yes.
Biennale. Yeah.
Yes. Be there
When
and
you
take more pictures. So
please, 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 please,
it's
please.
such a pleasure talking to you
Such a
like
pleasure,
always.
Sam. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you.